This is the Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com, where we help turn your expertise into content, conversations, and clients. That can mean a lot of things. If you want to make a course, write a book, do something cool with your marketing with AI, and you want to figure out what's possible in this new world, that's what we help you do at Avenue 9. My guest this week is Reverend and Dr. Christopher Benek. You can find him at christopherbenek.com. His book is The Church Leader's Guide to Artificial Intelligence, Understanding AI's Impact on Ministry, Theology, and Culture. We're going to focus mostly on the culture, I think, today, Christopher, but I want to talk to you about AI ethics and kind of the spiritual implications of this, because I think anybody that we've done 100 episodes now, so anybody that spends any time thinking about AI gets to this question of like, are we doomed? And I know this is a big wind up, and I'm going to give you a chance to respond. But I told you I saw things where they're creating AI designed viruses in labs, or they're creating the Matrix and putting in billions of AI agents just to talk to each other to see what happens. And it feels like there are at least a non-zero percentage of people who are not considering the AI ethics or spiritual implications, or like humanity, humankind's implications of AI. Where do you sit with this whole discussion?
Well, I'm a technological optimist. I think we're on the very front end of artificial intelligence as we understand it as a human created technology. And I think what we've seen with every technological trend ever is it takes humans a while to kind of figure it out and get it right. So when we create something, usually we screw it up, or we have to fiddle around with it until we get it right. And I think we're really kind of in the early stages of that fiddling, so to speak. And because this is something that is so widespread, everyone's using it all the time. There are a lot of different places where we're seeing it, and it feels pretty immersive right now. To like, it's kind of an all-encompassing field.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that is it's a hot button thing right now, and so everyone and their brother wants to talk about it, and that's great. But I think at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to see a shift, and it's not just going to be a conference on AI. It's going to be an AI and some other field specific conference. And you're going to see that in things like biotechnology, for example. That's one that's just coming. I think the average person doesn't realize how much is being done in that field and how much it has the potential to change our reality and our understanding of even what it means to be made human. And that's going to be a big shift. But we've seen big cultural and technological shifts before. The automobile, for example, is like an easy one. Any transportation, for example, there was a really small window between actually flight and landing on the moon, right, in human history.
Yeah.
And we forget these jumps happen quickly, and we're not always great students of history, and so a lot of times we forget our own history of these big jumps. And so this isn't super surprising, and it's a place where humanity has been before in different ways.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about the church, because obviously the church has been around long enough to have gone through all of these technological innovations, I guess. And it's not the first time people have been threatened or felt like there's going to be, some sort of new God or new thing that's going to disprove God or something like that. But it does feel like, and I think people who are even not spiritual that are listening today and thinking about their own businesses, there's a lot of companies, there's industries that are like, they're in construction, they're still writing contracts on the back of cigarette packets and stuff, and they're like, we have no interest in AI, not going to do it, like I'm going to go build some stuff. And I feel like the church is traditionally one that's moving slower on technology, but what's your take, and do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing, or what are the implications of that?
Well, I think some of it depends on how we define the church. If we're talking about the institution of the church, then yes, there are a lot of denominations within the church that kind of see themselves as the bearers of history, and they're supposed to kind of be cautious. There's other denominations, frankly, that are very progressive and they try to be out in front. And usually, in my experience, the truth is somewhere in the middle of that, right?
Yeah.
But if you define not the institution, but actually the body as the people who make up the church, actually, I think there are a lot of people I know in my church. I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm downtown Brickell, so right outside our doors, you can see high rises going up, and Citadel, the big hedge funds coming out of Chicago's right down the street. You can see right from where we are, Microsoft, Google, Peter Thiel's bought a bunch of property.
You're not in
and
Amish country, is what you're
no,
saying.
right. And so my congregation is full of tech people. And this is part of why I wrote Church Leaders Guide to Artificial Intelligence, not to be prescriptive to them, but to be suggestive, is to say, what is the ethic that you're using, and to get them to think about it. So the purpose of my book is not to tell you what to think about AI. It's to get you to ask kind of questions of yourself and start to figure out what your ethic is. And so, in the days before Easter that we call Lent, we had a Lenten series where we used the book and we went through the first few chapters together, and we had about 30 different people, and they were all different fields: technologists, business owners, architect. I mean, just you name it. And they're all using AI differently, and they're using it to try to find an advantage in many ways, but they're also using it as a co-creator or a collaborator, and understanding that there's strengths and there's weaknesses to AI. So, I tell them, be very weary of the answers you get back from your LLM, because they're wrong a lot. And it depends on the data pool that it's pulling from. So you still need to have expertise in your field. And there's some people maybe writing their contract on the back of a napkin. Maybe that's what works for them, and they're going to always do that, and they don't feel like they need to adapt into that. And I personally think everyone's going to have access to AI. And I think it's going to come down to is, again, like judgment and taste and values and empathy and trust and community and story and purpose and kind of all those things that actually make a good business, right? And so this is where actually the church is very similarly aligned with businesses, because the church has been around for a long time. And I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. There are good examples of the church, and there are terrible examples of the church. And I tell people all the time in my congregation, don't trust pastors just because they have REV in front of their name. You can go online in 5 minutes, get ordained in some, some crazy cult type thing where you don't have to have any education to do anything. You don't have to know what you're doing. And you can have someone who's super educated that doesn't have any moral fabric either. And so part of that is walking with people and earning trust and being, in relationship with people. And I actually think that's the same kind of thing that business leaders need when they go in is, to go in and build relationships with people. Now, you can automate things, but if over time people lose trust in your automations, they're going to lose trust in you, and they're going to take their business somewhere else. And so I think these are things that they speak universally to who we are as humans.
Yeah, I want to take these into a couple of buckets. That was a great setup there, where I think, to me, the lowest level bucket is probably easy and the least amount of threat. That, like, if you want to use AI to find a passage in the Bible or something, probably pretty good. You want to check and make sure that it actually got it right, like you mentioned. But you can brainstorm ideas. My brother's a pastor in California in a non-denominational church, and yeah, he can brainstorm ideas. He can look at a bunch of different things, and he's going to know and use his judgment in what he shares. And I think that's the same in any business, right? You use AI on your front lines and go for it. If it makes your job better or you can do it faster, great. Then I think there's this whole other kind of second tier where it's sort of the should we use it, and what of those jobs should remain human. You kind of touched on those of, like, listening to a confession or dealing with somebody in crisis. It's probably not great to just hand that over to AI. Although I've seen some really good answers, I'm sure there's also examples of really bad ones. And then I think there's this, like, third level that is the big ones. Like, does it change what it means to be human? Are we creating new life? Does AI become sentient or super intelligent? And I think, I want to ask you about all these so I could let you pick where you go next. But which of those buckets do you find you get the most questions in?
I get more practical questions than anything. People want to know if their
Hmm.
use of AI is ethical, right? And that's very contextual, right? So one person might use it in a
Yeah.
certain way that another person in a different profession uses the same way, but they might not be ethical in those two ways. So it's important, like
It's a
contextually, to know
tool,
people. So
right? Just
there,
like anything can be
yeah,
used bad or good.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so it can be used good or bad. And I mean, if you want to get into the biblical element of it, right? There's a reason where God says, "Make no other gods before me." That's like right at the beginning of the narrative, right? It's because we can turn anything into a little g god and effectively give it too much of our power and too much attention. So yeah, you have to be careful with how you use these things, right? And I give the example all the time. I use AI all the time to help outline sermons, to help me with transitional phrases, right? But if I was 26 coming out of seminary and I didn't know my voice yet, I'm 50, so I've written like
Right.
20 some years of sermons at this point, and but if I was just coming out of seminary and I didn't know my voice yet, that could actually be something that's damaging, right? So it's important to know
Right.
when do we need to step away from the technology, when do we need to lean into it, and that's a discernment process, and different people respond to that differently. I know people that can be online all day long and it doesn't phase them. They can turn it off and they can walk away. I know other people, they're on for an hour or 15 minutes and it starts creating anxiety and it's not a helpful thing. So it's very contextual in that element. I think as far as what it means to be human and whether this will turn into some other kind of intelligence. I mean, for me, I think one of the great things about AI right now is it's actually forcing us to discern what does it mean to be human, which is a
Hmm.
question we've kind of kept on the back burner. And it's like when it starts taking some of the things that we thought we were good at and it can actually do it better than us now, right? Then we have to actually say, well, what makes us valuable? And what are the things that we value about being human? And so I think, it's great to automate things, but the purpose of automating something is so that we can live into the part of us that we feel is the most human. And I think we discern what makes us human in community. I don't think we do that just as individuals. I think it's like, because somebody could be unethical and they could say, oh, I really think it makes us, but it's actually the body of people. So I actually think this is a really healthy thing that society's going through right now as we're discerning. You have Anthropic and OpenAI are on the
Yeah.
front of the with their ethical, I was talking with somebody about whichever one it was where they said, oh, our AI just attacked it breached another company. Like we have no, and it's like, yeah, it did that because you set it up to do it. It just didn't do it on its own, and so it's great that the public is paying attention to this and there's some accountability on it. I
I
think
think that's a fun way to think about it. That
yeah,
like this is we don't have a really great definition for what our own consciousness is. So trying to determine if something else is conscious is an interesting challenge for us and worth having that discussion. Which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it. Is there's some really meaty questions in here, right? What separates our consciousness from that of an animal or a dog, and what does that like actually look like with AI or something else that can perform the same functions but not have the same spiritual implications? That's a really tough question.
yeah. I mean, I think, look, I've kind of become known for a little thing that I do with people. So we're not God. I think most people would agree to that. If you don't agree to that, I'm available for counseling, right? So but we're not God. So compared to God, we would be God's alternative intelligence, right? And so and I look at other uh animals. My cat, for example, it has intelligence. It's just a different kind of intelligence. So I'm not intimidated at all. I don't think the church should be intimidated that if we're created in the image of God, which is what scripture says, and we are co-creators like a child with their parent with God, and we're creating things, it would not bother me a bit if some new reality was developed or created where we have some kind of other consciousness in the world.
Mm.
I think people get worried about these things because they're not thinking kind of about the bigger picture. One of the things that's fascinating in the church is the church talks about angels as if we all know what an angel is, and we've all seen an angel, and they're on our Hallmark cards. We dress our kids up like them for Christmas. They're on your wrapping paper. You know what I mean? And everyone talks about what the heck is an angel? Is it an alien? Is it a multi-dimensional, like, is it a fabricated imagination of a, like, we don't know for sure, but what we do is we talk about the potential of life in other places that we don't know about, and we've
Mm.
discovered life that we weren't familiar with within human history, at the depths of the ocean, right, and far off places that had not been explored yet. So there are all sorts of things in reality that we have the ability to discover and bring into fruition, and I think we wildly underestimate our capacity on that. Now, what that doesn't do is it doesn't change our responsibility as humans to learn about what it means to be us and to flourish and to be caretakers, and co-creators of the dominion that we've been given, right? And so my hope is that as business leaders, as church leaders, as leaders in general, go about this interaction with AI, is they'll be thinking about those things, and they won't take those issues lightly. It's easy for us to just give our power over to these LLMs or to our automations or to whatever, but to say what is actually the human in the loop on these things, so that we're not just running away, because we can abscond our responsibility, and we can, have kind of an escapism theology to just say, oh well, we're just going to not do this anymore.
Yeah.
And we should actually, we need to hold on to our responsibility. We're creating these things, and we need to be responsible and have good practices in whatever field that we're in.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I kind of feel like with 8.5 billion people on the planet, if it can be done with AI, someone is going to do it. So
Right.
kind of saying like, no, not me, I'm going to shelter myself off doesn't really solve the problem of the ethics
Yeah, and that's why it's
and stuff.
important to
We need to kind of
participate in
plan for
things.
all eventualities.
Yeah, 100%. It's in my experience, at least, when you flee being in your involvement from something, you don't change the problem in a positive way, right? Like, and so for us, we need to continue to be engaging with these things, and it's important. But it also means that there are new things that we need to address that we might not have addressed before. We might have had businesses, for example, that weren't as relational as they needed to be before, and now we're finding, well,
Mhm.
we need to be relational so that people actually know, what we're about and why we're different. And this is the thing that I think people forget and take the AI out of it, is your biggest value proposition is you. You are uniquely made in a way where your context gives you the ability to see the world in ways that nobody else on earth sees the world. So because you grew up a certain way, you grew up in a context in your thing, and so you are your value proposition in many ways. And understanding that about yourself, being able to present that in a way where what you bring to the table is a point of value, I think becomes really important. And it also then helps us to see the importance of being with other people, partnering with other people, getting the perspectives of other people, and that becomes acute in this AI world now, because you
Yeah,
can
I
have
think
all
that's
of
the
your
basis of this
information just,
show.
yeah, I mean, you could have all your information aggregated to you, right? But that doesn't give you the value proposition that people are looking for. It just gives, a summary of everything else, and so understanding how you're particular, and that's where, for me, AI is the LLM movement is a great thing, because I'm able to actually, I'm a person who asks questions all the time. And so it doesn't matter what time it is, I can ask this question, and I might not like the answer I get, but I keep going back and forth. I mean, if you saw my chat GPT threads, I mean, you'd see how much I'm arguing with the AI to go, no, that's not right. What are you talking about? But that's a dialogue with it to say, hey, no, think about it this different way. Make sure you don't have your echo chamber on, right? So you're getting something where you're you're pulling out the good information that you have that ChatGPT doesn't have yet, right? And so some of that
Yeah.
information is helping me to discover who I am, and it's less about the LLM. It's giving me a mirror to actually reflect back. So I think from a spiritual standpoint, that's actually super helpful. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning and the church isn't open, you don't have an easy accessible person. This is a helpful thing for people to be able to do that to a certain level. But I think it's really important that we continue to foster those conversations about how do we use this technology well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's been the idea of this show, really. And I think powerful sales and marketing. And my hope for humanity is that this finally swings the pendulum back the other way. Like, we've been automating and we've becoming less human and selling remotely and marketing on social, which made us less social and stuff. I have a feeling that, like, we're taking this to the extreme now. It's got to swing back the other way, and that gives me a lot of hope. But you also spurred like three other questions that I feel like you're doing a great job. I want to ask you some difficult ones. Like, there's this theory that if we can create like something like the Matrix, that the chances are it's already happened somewhere else and we're already in the Matrix. And you mentioned kind of, different types of consciousness or states of consciousness. I'm kind of interested in what your take is, or how you help people think through this question of, like, even what is reality at this point as we start creating alternate and artificial realities.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating thing. So in COVID, actually, I had a 3D model of our church built, and I put it in VR chat, and I had so many people coming that it was shutting down the servers. We just had people all over, and it was wild because in VR, people are whatever avatar they are, so they might show up as a panda bear. I mean, I was giving a Bible study once, and Spider-Man swung across the room, right? So
Nice.
and the fascinating thing about that was that I actually had somebody who was in those meetings, and they came and they drove by the church. They had never seen the church in real life, but they drove by it and kind of gave it a second look and was like, "Wait, I've seen that before." So they pulled in the parking lot. They walked in the front door, and it just so happened I was in the lobby of the church, and they came in, and the person asked, "Who's the pastor at this church?" And as soon as I spoke, they recognized my voice.
Yeah.
That person is now a member of our church, and they had never been to our physical church before. So the thing is VR is a great example of another reality that we can be in. I think anybody who's ever lucid dreamed before have experienced another kind of reality. They call it like a poor man's vacation, right? Because if you lucid dream
Yeah.
and you're dreaming, you have some control over your dream. And there's a smaller percentage of people in the world who can do that, but the folks who can have that experience. And so I think we are just on the front end of understanding what it means to be human. And I think a lot of times we put really small parameters around it. But this is where I think the Bible and scripture and religion of different tradition helps us to think about these things. In the Christian tradition, for example, Jesus dies and is resurrected. And after he's resurrected, he's kind of like humans are now. He's physical, he's hungry. It's hilarious. Like, his first thing, he appears to the disciples and he asks them if they have any food, because a good resurrection really builds up an appetite, right? And so
Haven't
and
eaten
so
for
there's
3 days.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And so, but there's other things where he's not like us at all. He walks through locked doors. He ascends into heaven. He walks with disciples on a road who presumably those disciples have been with him for a while, and they don't recognize him until he ritually breaks bread. And then he's like shapeshifter Jesus, snaps back, and they know who he is, and he disappears. So the thing is if that's an example of what a resurrected human is, whatever the heck that means, right? Like, really, whatever it means, because we don't know what it would mean scientifically, but that allows our imaginations to start thinking about, well, what is it that happens after we die? And why is that important? Well, when we start thinking about ourselves as eternal beings as opposed to just temporal beings, it really changes how we treat people. It changes our business ethic. It changed. I tell people all the time, you might not be getting along with somebody, but what if that person lives for eternity with you? You know what I mean? It's probably
Well,
worth
speaking of that, do you think we'll
reconciling, right?
reach singularity at some point, or they're predicting it could be within our lifetimes? We're of similar age here. That, like,
Yeah.
they tell us, like, take care of yourself. We might be 30 years from now,
Well,
like
I,
stopping
I've
aging or stopping most ways of dying.
I've written on my website that maybe the technological singularity is a way that the eschaton, the end times, or the new reality of eternity comes into being. I mean,
Mm,
the early Christians, they didn't believe they would die. Actually, if you read in the New Testament, part of what Paul's letters in the New Testament are about is he's trying to explain to people who are Christians when they're loved, or they're Jews actually, who have become Christians, really. So they're trying to merge those two understandings of reality together. And they're like, well, if Jesus is coming back, what happens when my loved one died before he comes back? Well, now we've lived
right.
quite a bit of time and we realize maybe God's not on our timetable, right? And so the thing is but Paul's these disciples of Paul who he's witnessing to, talking to, they're essentially dealing with these same questions, saying, well, what does eternity look like and what's our place in it? And the
Mm,
thing is we don't have all the answers. If you look back to what Jesus says, Jesus tells us we're not going to know the time or the place on these things. And the reality is I think that's okay, because what it does is it doesn't have us focused on the thing that's coming. It focuses on us right now in the present. We can get so caught up in what the potential future might be that we miss the joyous things we have right now. We miss our children growing up. We miss our relationships with one another. We miss the benefits we have in our businesses and our community right now. And I think if we try to take care of those things right now, the future's going to be all right. And this is something that the church has done over time. The church has made many, many, many mistakes that the church should apologize for. On the flip side of that, the church has offered things to humanity as far as advancing education, advancing human rights, advancing the welfare of people. The world is better now than it's ever been before, and the church has had a good, great part of that involvement. And I think the opportunity is now, as humanity, we're starting to see some of those values. Those are intrinsic to who we are as humans, and so we're joining together. And now we have this opportunity, this great technology, to leverage this technology to use it for good in the world. And so that's super exciting, because with all those unique contextual experiences, we need more and more people looking at how to use AI for good than anything. And I think
yeah,
that's
I
where
wanted
I'm
to
really
ask you
optimistic and excited about that.
about that with the ethics and stuff, because I kind of feel like you could say the same thing about technology. Obviously, there are downsides to anything, and there are upsides, and some of the ethical considerations, with AI, I don't think quite get enough play, especially when you think locally and short term, from just water and power usage to jobs, to maybe they're, like you said, causing a lot of anxiety or stress or even identity confusion for people. But then there's also just all sorts of, like, when it's trained on majority rule, there's ethical considerations about, like, when it was first generating images, it was generating images of all white people and
Sure.
stuff, or
Right.
it's obviously being allocated in disproportions, where rich people in Silicon Valley get a different AI than poor people in South Africa. It seems like there's a whole bunch of new ethical considerations, good and bad. As somebody that's a technophile, how do you think about technology's place in ethics when it's complicated like that?
Well, I think one that's goes right into, I think we need more voices in the conversation, right? It's not that we need less voices. I think we need more than the handful of white tech barons that we see coming out of Silicon Valley having these conversations. And for example, in my church, I have a very multi-ethnic church. There's 50 different nationalities represented. Is the kind of white guy from Ohio who barely speaks English most days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it
I,
says the
I'm
two middle-aged white
yeah,
guys,
yeah,
from the middle of
I'm
the country. Yeah.
I'm in the minority of it, which is part of why I'm trying to facilitate conversations because I want those voices to be raised up in the conversation, because there are perspectives that I have the benefit of learning from because I have the privilege of serving as a pastor in the church. But I wouldn't have the privilege of that if I didn't have all these wonderful multi-ethnic folks around me teaching me about their culture, their language, their experience of life, and how it's different. And so these are things where there needs to be a justice element to what we're doing always. And we need to make sure that when we talk about more people, we're not just talking about one group of people. We're actually creating equity and justice. But I also find uh, the world is more just than it was 500 years ago, certainly.
Mm,
Right. And I would actually say it's more just than it was 100 years ago. Does it mean there aren't problems? No, of course there's problems. We see them every day. We're
yeah.
trying to address them. But I think the technology also gives us the ability to address them to scale now in ways that we haven't been able to before. And so this is why it's so important. I mean, even like a podcast like this, where people are hearing this and they're wondering, well, does this really matter for me? It 100% matters, because when you go out and you make the effort,
Yeah.
like you are actively changing things, and you have more ability to learn now and change the world than anybody in your situation in history. I mean, you can go online on YouTube University, and I've learned how to do things I never thought I'd be able to do, and I've learned them from people half my age, from across the world who are just inquisitive about these things. What a wonderful opportunity for people to go out and actualize that goodness in the world in real positive ways. And so, is it
Yeah.
over?
I got
No, I
one
mean, we got lots of work
final.
to do. Yeah, but
We do, and I want one final question for you here. Is I guess, can you tell us maybe how you would help a parishioner or an individual make this decision for themselves? Because I see a lot of, and it's fine, a lot of different takes, but some people are, when it's complicated, getting confused. I think, and I even feel a little torn sometimes where, I want to invest in SpaceX because I want to make a cool investment in my future and make some money, but also like that just means I gave $1,000 to Elon Musk, the richest man on the planet. Like that seems really dumb to me. Or other people say I'm not going to buy an iPhone because the batteries, the lithium in the batteries is mined by like a pregnant woman in the Congo, but now I can't make money on my phone, or I can't like provide for my family with the same tool. It feels like ethical decisions are a lot more complicated today than they were 500 years ago too, even if we're all trying to be more moral and ethical. How do you help
well,
somebody
yeah,
make an
but you
individual
still had
decision of whether it's right for them?
sure. Well, I think part of it is you have to think about what is around you immediately and what can you actually impact, right? And like you can absolutely impact how you engage the next person that you encounter, right? That has nothing to do with Elon Musk or SpaceX or a woman in the Congo. That has to do, like I live in Miami, where everyone decides to drive like whatever country we came from, and that creates a lot of honking and road rage and whatever. And I always tease my congregation and say, like, look, you're gonna drive out of the parking lot today and somebody's gonna cut you off. Now my question is how are you gonna respond, right? And so these, having this kind of mentality where we're going to take our formative action every time, everything we control right now, and we're going to make decisions. And part of that is just to say, well, what are the things that you're called to? Right. And so actually in Church Leaders Guide, in the back of it, so it's Church Leaders Guide because that's my context. But
Yeah,
if
tell
you're
us
a
about the
business
book.
leader, yeah, if you're a business leader, you can pick the book up and you can just replace business for for church, right? And in the back of it, there's what we work through, which is a study guide that just has questions. And that's the first way that I ask people to engage it.
Mm.
It's not for me to tell you what to believe. It's for you to discern, what do you believe? And then to say, based on what I believe, how am I going to act? So for example, I'll give you an easy one. It has nothing to do with AI, it's just a personal thing. I'm a pescatarian, right? Now
Mm.
I've had cattle ranchers in my congregation and other places, and I wasn't a pescatarian my whole life. I actually I had cattle farmers in my church, and they would raise their cattle. They would bird them. They would raise them. The cattle would have one bad day, and they would weep when those cattle died. It was part of their thing. And I'll tell you, the best steak I ever had in my whole life came from those things. But I got to a place in my life where I discerned for myself, not for anybody else. It's not me. I'm not making a judgment to anybody, just for me, that if you put that cow in front of me and you said, Chris, you need to kill this to have your hamburger, I couldn't do it. So I moved to beyond type meats, right? That is a different kind of food. Now,
I like the Beyond Beef.
Yeah, and that's an ethic that I've chosen for me based on my context, right? But it's not because somebody else is making me do it or whatever. It's because I've discerned that this is where I am and it's what I'm called to. It's the kind of person that I'm trying to be, right? And I think we have all these kind of micro formative iterations in our life that we don't break down like that, right? And so people ask me all the time, they're like, well, Pastor, why do you do this? And I said, well, this is a me ethic. What's your ethic? And what is it? Why do you hold the ethics that you hold across any number of things? And I think this becomes the challenging thing as humans, is it's really easy when technology speeds up for us to not slow down enough to ask the questions so that we don't lose our identity and have the tech just kind of take us over, but we actually know what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? If you're just finding yourself doom scrolling every morning, first thing in the morning, the question is like, well, what does that say about who you are and who you want to be and who you want the world to be, right? And then the next question is then what are you going to do about it? Right. And it's the same thing. It's like, if you've got a business, if you lead people, if you're whatever, it's like thinking about those questions to say, well, what are you going to do about it? And I think the empowering thing is there's a lot you can do about it now, right? The questions may seem crazy. It's like there's these over the top things. Elon Musk telling us no one's going to need money and by 2030 or whatever, get out of here.
Right.
But yeah, it says the richest guy.
Because he's going to have it all.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is to say, like, in my community, right where I am right now, with the people I engage, how am I being the best version of me, and how am I helping them to be the best version of them? If everybody actually took that seriously, the world would be radically different and radically better than it already is. And so I think that's the opportunity.
Yeah, and that's a great place to wrap it up here. We've been talking with Reverend Dr. Christopher Benek. You can find him at christopherbenek.com. He does speaking and appearances like this to help you out as well. Just reach out. And the book is The Church Leader's Guide to Artificial Intelligence, Understanding AI's Impact on Ministry, Theology, and Culture. You can find that on Amazon or on his website there, christopherbenek.com. Christopher, thanks for joining us. And until next time, Avenue 9 is your partner in Human First AI Marketing, where we're going to help you put your ideas first, your beliefs first, and your voice first into your marketing, help you put your customers first and your employees first, and still use AI to amplify your impact and help small businesses market like big brands. If that sounds like a fun way to do it, go to avenue9.com. Until next time, keep going, everybody.